Welcome to another episode of the Chronicles of Mr. I am Mr. Pierre, and I am so overjoyed to be joined by a person who has known me from the beginning of the journey of being an educator, and that is Dr. Rebecca Good. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh, I have been so excited all week. I have been looking forward to just sharing space with you. I'm serious.
Same. The question I like to start with every single guest that comes onto the podcast is how did you get into education? How did you fall into this realm?
There was no other path. If anything, there were just points along my journey where I think people kind of tried to steer me in a different direction, but I
Hmm.
knew from being a little kid that I was going to be a teacher. It just looked like the coolest thing to be. And my stuffed animals, I taught them, they had homework, and I wanted to be the book teacher because I was too young to understand like the literature teacher or the writing teacher, but there was no other path. All I ever wanted to was to work with kids and be in a classroom of kids. And as you go through, you get older, you start thinking, do I like little kids? Do I like medium-sized kids? Do I like tall kids? Which kids do I want to work with? And I thought I was like, I'm going to be a high school English teacher. I was like, seemed like the coolest thing. And then I went and taught high school, 12th, 11th, 10th, ninth grade, and I just kept backing myself up. 8th, 7th, 6th. Oh, no, you're too young. Stick to 7th.
All
And
right.
middle school was the jam. That's my jam, Willie. That's your jam. Like you.
Yeah. 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 I started off in six, and like six, seven, and eight is where I'm at now, and that really is my lane. I've tried going up to high school, and it's not where I'm the happiest and most authentic me. I'm able to visit the little kiddos, and I'm able to spend about 30 to 45 minutes, and then I'm like, all right, tap out. So I know I cannot do a whole day. Middle school is just enough sass, just enough like I know how to do this. I don't need you, mister. Just enough to like, oh snap, let me humble myself. That roller coaster that I'm sort of able to ride in. Yeah, that really is my lane of the type of kiddos, like you said, little kiddos, middle kiddos, tall kiddos. Yeah, it's the middle kiddos that are for me. Yeah,
The middle
but as you,
kiddos are for.
and like you were saying, like you knew that you wanted to be an educator was, and there were at points in time that folks may have wanted to redirect you. Was that because like you had a great educator in your life, or was it just something that you saw? Like, where did that grow from, or was that just always in you and you were able to identify it?
It really truly was always in me. And I'm not the classic story of like there are educators all in my family. Like the fact is that is that there isn't a whole bunch of educators in my family. My mom was like early on in tech, and like the and I don't have a lot of positive experiences actually with teachers from kind of pre-K through 12th grade. There were some sprinkled in and out, but the majority of my schooling experience was really hard. Like I didn't like school for a lot of it. I didn't really like really love school until college. Um, and so I did have my eighth grade PE teacher, Mr. Stewart. He he saw something in me, or he saw not something, he saw leadership in me, and he tapped into it in a way that was really like positive, and he like brought it out in a positive way because I was the middle schooler. I was the one that had teachers shaking in their boots. They were like,
You
please
too.
do not put her in my class. That was me, all me.
That's interesting.
And
Yeah.
so yeah. So I can't really remember besides Mr. Stewart, like the teachers I was like, I'm gonna be like that teacher. There were a couple teachers in there I was like, I'm gonna do better than that teacher. That pushed me.
I I hear you, and like listening and hearing you start to tell your story. Like similarly, I was very much a class clown. I was the one looking to disrupt um, whatever flow that the teacher was trying to establish in terms of like disseminating the knowledge. I was like, nah, this is gonna be my show. So it's interesting that both of us were like, mm-mm. If I were to have me in my classroom right now, I feel like I'm able to identify, oh, I see me in you, or I see attributes of you. I'm like, all right, I know how to nourish this rather than like crush it, which is what I felt a lot of teachers did when I was coming up.
You know what, Willie, that makes me think, and I don't know if I knew that about you, that you were a bit of a class clown. I know a lot
Yeah,
about you. Like that might, I might, but it makes sense
yeah.
because I feel that you do something that I think that all like exceptional teachers do. You ensure that young people feel seen. And so, like, young people just always felt seen by you, and seen for who whatever they brought to the table. If they were
Mm,
the class clown, if they were more of the like stay back and in the cut and quiet. Every student in every classroom I ever saw you in always felt seen by you, and I can relate to that in so much that I was when I taught, I always wanted each kid to know I see you. I see you for who you are in this moment, and tomorrow you could be a totally different you, and I'm going to see you on that day too. And like that is something that I always wanted. Like just see me. Like see me for what I bring to the table. And so, you give that out as an educator.
for sure. So for those who are listening, context, Dr. Good was a principal who I had the pleasure of serving our kiddos under for 3 years. She then, or rather, you could tell your story way better than me. I recall talking to my sister because I was in Georgia at the time. Came up to visit her. We went to go, and she was like, "Hey, you should try this school." She mentioned it because she was in New Haven at the time. She's like, "I know they're looking for a teacher, and I know you're looking to make a move because our nephew was just born, and so I wanted to be closer." Um, Interviewed with Dr. Good. I remember you and I remember Pete. I don't remember much else. And I remember there was a young man who was like my guide throughout the school after the interview. Um, and I was just like, wow, this feels different. There was a calmness to Elm City. It felt very much like, all right, this is a place that I could rock and roll. And I just remember feeling like this was different because I was at another school that did not feel anything like what Elm City was. And the interview just, I thought, went okay. And then I want to say, like, within a couple hours, or maybe the next day, I got your voicemail like, "Hey, we'd like to offer you the position." And just coming into Elm City was like knowing how to play basketball and then jumping straight to the NBA because there were folks like you, there were folks like Trip Kosh. Um, I had only just seen glimpses of Kali and was just like, wow, this is, yeah, I think I could grow here. And to be able to come into a position like that with folks like y'all was really, really, really dope. And so when you talked about um, me being able to see kiddos, it was a moment where I felt like you saw me, and then was able to see in the 3 years that we served those kiddos together, like moments you're like, hey, you can do this. You ought to do this. Let that go. Let it roll off your back. Don't hold on to it. Like there are going to be these roller coaster moments. Um, yeah, and I felt like I grew so much in those 3 years where you were president, where you were principal. To that, when you transition to your other positions, like it was like, no, I got enough gems from Rebecca that I'm gonna be all right, and things to
Mhm.
not to forget. So that point you talked about seeing me seeing kiddos, I also felt like you were one who saw me and continues to see me. I think so much so of like
Mhm.
similar to like we see our kiddos and like we see you here in the present, but we also have this, as I like to say, like farmer of the future. Like you could grow to be this. Here's an idea, maybe something you could do. And so there were many moments where you're like, hey, Wooly, you ought to get into Relay. And then 3 years later, I'm like, hey, Rebecca, I think I should do Relay. Hey, Wooly, have you ever thought about this? And then 2 years later, hey, Rebecca, I think I want to do this. Hey, Rebecca, I'm at this new school and I'm speaking to so and so and such and such. She's like, hey, Wooly, you should lead a PD. I'm like, okay, let me go talk to my principal. so, so all these moments of like, the whole being seen, but also like, hey, I may not initially see this thing in myself, but getting that little
Mm.
nudge or little encouragement, a little push, I know for sure helped me to the point where it was like, at one point after getting married and talking to my wife, like, hey, babe, would you be willing to go to California? Yeah, let's move across the country in the middle of a pandemic. It's going to be all good. To that point of like having no more fear of like, hey, I know my worth as an educator. If Callie's calling, so be it. Yeah. So like
Mm.
yeah, you saw a lot. And I think that goes back to like what you were saying of like the being seen part, like for sure. I experienced that in your case as well.
Wow. Well, it just just hear. Thank you so much. I just hearing the some of the impact that I've had on you is just so heartwarming. I think about when and hearing that it makes me think about that Mr. Stewart, my PE teacher, where I said he saw me, but he saw like the potential in me, like what I could do with my leadership instead of being a bully, like I could be like a leader and I could like motivate and inspire. And hearing what you just shared, it makes me think that yeah, like I see you and I always and I see this like potential. Like there's like, oh, what about this and what about that? And I get so excited about possibilities and the potential in people, and when especially when people are, this goes to grown-ups. I work a lot with grown-ups. Now I work mostly with all grown-ups and not kids anymore, but kids have a level of authenticity and like transparency and honesty that I just like, I deeply appreciate. Even when they're lying, they're like honest. Like they're like, you're like, you are so truthful even in your lie right now. Like they're that, what gets in the way as we grow up oftentimes is ego, right? And our egos kind of like mask it and our humility kind of goes away.
Yeah.
But you, Willie, always held on to your like humility. You always stayed humble and you always looked to grow and put your foot in and see if this works and see if that doesn't. And I think that that is really really paved a path for you like in this space, and being able to make an impact. I think that a humble educator, an educator that's always seeking to like do right by kids, are the ones that truly do right by kids. And so I just get energized by educators like you.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the things, and that's something I had to learn. Um, yeah, I recall, and you maybe recall Miss Boone too. After I think it
Sometimes you
was,
mean sometimes.
yeah, and I just remember after either IA1 or IA2, and I'm just like, I think I'm jacking these kiddos up. Like, what am I doing? And you're like, I just remember us having a conversation, and at the end of the conversation, wiping a tear from my eye and being like, all right, let's get back in the game. Like, the year's not done. Um, Whatever I think that I'm doing, reflect. What can I do better? And that's been the North Star of like, do right by the kids. Hindsight will
Mhm,
always be 2020, like, oh, I could have done this, could have, should have, whatever. However, if I'm leading from a place of like, what I know is what's best for this kid, and let me not do harm and look to do well. And when I'm wrong, not be so, yeah, humble enough to be like, you know what, kiddos, my bad. I messed that up. I shouldn't have said that. I was thinking
Mhm.
this, regardless, my intentions might have been good, but I can see that the impact is that I've harmed you in some way, shape, or form. My apologies. And we were just talking before the show started of like one cohort of kiddos, I think it was my second year there, um, that really tested that. Like they were a group of kiddos who they came together and like, no, these things that y'all are doing are not okay. We're not happy with it, and we're gonna push back, push back, push back some more. And it really caused us as a group of educators to like, yeah, examine what are we doing, why are we doing X, Y, and Z, and if the result is that our kiddos are like, hey, this is not helping in our learning, then it's like, and then why are we doing it? We got to let some things go. And yeah, to now know like those cohort of kiddos are in college doing amazing things. Um, yeah, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
I mean, it really is, and we have to come to terms with there. I've been in education for, gosh, over 20 years now, and there are things and there are steps that I took that I wish I hadn't. Like they were messed up. Like they
Yeah,
like and I didn't know, or I might have had this like gut feeling, but out of fear, out of like security, I didn't speak up or I didn't say anything. And so when, the more each kind of year and each step I've gone through, I really honed into like, no, that's wrong. And it
yeah,
was wrong then, and we can do better. Like
yep,
we didn't like, need to like fight for compliance. Like we needed to help our students learn how to use their voice in a way that it would be heard and like have them advocate, and it is incredible classes like the one you had that really pushed us to say we could be better, and we can do better. And as a school community, we like stepped up and like we named like, yeah, we can. Let's figure out how. We're the grown-ups here. Let's figure out how to do right by the kids that we have here. And each generation, I mean, and that was one generation. Now
yeah.
your students now, they're pushing
Woo!
on a whole nother level. They're like,
Yep.
you need to step up your game again. And like
Yeah.
that's like that constant stepping up a game with every group that comes in every year. That's like what makes teaching so fun and exciting.
Yeah.
To me, like that's always makes it like, oh, you're a whole new grade and you're a whole new class.
Yeah. To know that our middle school kiddos went up to the high school down the street, and because of what when they advocated rather than sort of want to stifle, quiet, snuff out that voice of theirs, we may have times like, hey, don't want to tone police, but your approach to this, maybe you want to consider X, Y, and Z. And to then know that to know that those cohort of kiddos like went up to the high school and did and said certain things was just like, yeah, those are Elm City kiddos. And to also know that
Like
once they were,
you could
yeah,
tell an Elms kid. You could tell by the
yeah,
way they debated. You could tell by
yep,
the way they advocated. Like
yeah,
and I loved when people would say like, an Elm City kid, you better come with clear
yeah,
rationale and be able to explain it, because that's what kids deserve. They
yeah,
deserve a rationale. They deserve to
yeah,
understand like why they're doing the things that they're doing.
yeah,
And I was really proud of that. Like I was so proud that we created a space where they felt safe enough
mm-hmm,
to push and advocate, and then we kind of help guide them in a way that like, here's how even more people are going to hear you. Like
yeah,
it doesn't have to be a fight. Like somebody just stepped on your new sneakers and creased them up. We can get forward without it having to like blow up into something big.
right. Like, was having a conversation with some kiddos this week, regarding the nuance between anger and aggression. I was like, look, anger is
Mm,
okay. You can feel the feels, and you ought to feel the feels. Don't stifle that anger because it'll eventually come out. What's not okay is the aggression of like me then picking up a chair and throwing it across the room and potentially hurting myself or others. There's no reason
Yeah.
for that aggression of like, all right, I'm angry. How do I articulate my anger? How do I channel that anger into something that is not going to be of harm to me or the people around us? And to be able to see our kiddos who master and wield the tongue so well was, and the written word
Mm.
was something that I'm like, who you can give me numbers and I can play with numbers all day. The vocabularistics is more my wife, and that is more your wheelhouse as well, or Kali. But to see our kiddos, I was like, yes, that too is what I appreciated about a wonderful team of knowing like I'll help you with the numbers. Lubin will help you with the science. Kali will help you with the words. Eventually, when you get up to Tripka, she's going to help you even more. Reema's going to do this. And then when you get up to the high school, get up to college, like to know that all these levels are being on top of each other so that, yeah, you have a cohort of kids, you have these individuals who blossom and bloom later on in life. And they're like, yeah, as an educator, I'm just like, yeah, I had them for 10 months. I helped in that. I played a little part in that. And to have kiddos come back and say thank you is, oh, yeah, yeah,
It's the best. It's like
yeah.
the best gift. And I will say that, as our students like went from teacher to teacher, not only did teachers help them with like the academic side, but what you just said about anger and aggression, like our team, our Elm City teachers really, they also like were able to listen and recognize when
Mm-hmm.
a young person was angry and not just so
Yeah,
many kids are like dismissed for their feelings, or they're told to like stop those feelings, just
yeah,
like don't have extreme feelings, don't have extreme like joy, and don't have extreme anger, like you're not allowed to
yeah,
have that.
yeah,
And that, and we didn't stifle it. And when extreme happened, we like waited for it to come down, and then we had a conversation about it. We didn't
yeah,
ignore it.
yeah.
Like you have feelings, and feelings are valid. We just want to show you like healthier ways to
Mm-hmm.
express like all those feelings that you're trying to express.
Yeah,
But taking that time is part of building building a kid in like a whole way, not just like in the numbers and
mm-hmm.
in the writing, um, and their like historical understanding. It's the whole child.
To piggyback off of that, you need to have an admin team that sees the value in that because no shade to anyone else. Well, maybe a little bit
So
of shade
true.
of
So
like
true.
being at places
So true.
where that is like
And
spoken in words, like, yeah, SEL, take care of the whole kid. And then
we
when you,
definitely like we had that team. And I mean, I
yeah,
think that that's why shifting from Elm City into starting Relay as a teacher's college here in Connecticut, it was my way of saying, I want to create something that allows for even more teachers to feel that they can kind of honor that space for kids, that we can teach our kids like the ABCs and the one, two, threes, and also, yeah, yeah. So, and then I was saying how, part of that is why I went to Relay, and to create a graduate school for educators so that I like, because I really deeply believe that we needed more pathways into education, but we needed to ground our teacher preparation in much more, like, culturally responsive pedagogy, our social emotional learning, like that. Those aren't just like buzzwords. That's about seeing kids and honoring kids' feelings and emotions and helping them navigate that space. And I thought, wow, like look at this incredible team and this incredible community we built at Elm City. Like here's an opportunity for me to help expand some of that energy in multiple other areas.
yeah.
It's almost like irresponsible for me not to kind of jump into that and try out this kind of higher education space.
And now that you are in that role as, is it, what is the title of your role at Relay?
I'm the National Vice Provost of Teacher Preparation for Relay Graduate School of Education. So once I opened the Connecticut Graduate School,
Yeah,
I then was promoted to lead all of the schools across the country for Relay.
sounds about right. Sounds right.
That's
And
right.
what would you say in the time that you've been with Relay? What has been the thing that you are looking to help um, teachers walk away with?
No, I would want teachers to understand that going into this profession, like I hope they understand that you got to play the long game. Like you're not gonna like knock it out of the park like that first year. You might have those awesome moments, but when you if truly to truly have like an impact, you got to stick with it and you got to ride through like those hard years because on the other side of it, it's a pretty special space. And so like I hope that we kind of demystify like teaching. I think some people go into it and they're like, my first year, it's gonna be like, oh, amazing. And you're like, no, 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 let's just like get that out of your head. It's gonna be
Yep.
rough and tough, and you're gonna make it through it.
Yeah.
Like, and when you do, it's going to be worth it. And you're going to look back on it and you're going to say, I wouldn't be as good as I am today if I didn't like stick it out and really try to grow and learn from all of those kind of bumpy moments in this career. So
Hmm.
when I think about our relay teachers, that's like I hope that my faculty are really instilling in them not only just the like pedagogical knowledge and like the content knowledge, but really grounding them in the amazingness of the profession. Like teaching truly is like the greatest profession in like the universe. I feel like, as Alex said as a kid.
Agreed. Agreed. If present day Dr. Good could speak to first year teacher Good, what would she relay? What would she relay to her? What would she say to her? Like, no, and knowing that, look, I think it's something you told me, like, hey, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So one or two things that you could share with her, what would it be?
I would tell her, slow down.
Hmm.
Don't I if I could go to my back to myself, if I could talk to myself right now, I would say stay in the classroom longer.
Hmm.
No matter what like anybody asks of you to like go into leadership and do all that, you'll have plenty of time to do that.
Okay.
Stay in the classroom longer. That is probably the number one thing. Um,
Why?
it was such a beautiful space and it's been so hard to get back to.
Hmm.
Um, and and I know one day I will, but it is, like, this is how I'm supposed to be serving right now in education, in leadership roles. So I wish I would have taken my time a little longer in those in the classrooms and stayed teaching middle school, seventh, eighth graders how to read and write.
All right. All right. It's encouraging to hear that because that is a conversation I have at least every other year with admin. They're like, hey, Wooly, we see this in the classroom. We would love to have you leave and move. And I'm like, I've seen enough folks who have made that tradition and who have also echoed what you said are like, man, I really wish I had stayed in the classroom a little longer. Not that they don't enjoy and don't see the impact because they
Yeah,
recognize, hey, when you leave the classroom, you have an understanding of what goes on in the classroom, and therefore you can help the teachers who are in the trenches, if you will. However, yeah, there's something different of being there and being with the kids and having those day to days ups and downs that you talked about. That we
yeah,
all, yeah, that keeps us going. Yeah,
yeah,
I am at that point where I'm recognizing that if it's a bell curve, I'm on the other side of the bell curve. That point is coming where it's like I will be. in some other leadership role and not in the classroom. And so I am trying to hold on as long as possible as well too, to be in the classroom, to be like, let me and I am fully aware of like enjoy the ups and downs of an academic year, because it's not going to be the same once I'm no longer there. And I also feel as
Yeah.
if like it's like going home. Like once you leave home, like you can't really go back. And I don't say this to discourage anyone, but I feel like the moment I step out, I'm gonna step out. Like I'm not. I don't want to look back and be like, oh yeah, I really want to do one more year. I don't want to pull a Michael Jordan with a 45 on the Wizards. I really want to go out 98, hit the jump shot. That's it. Yeah, or Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. Like I really want to just go out and be like, that's it.
Mhm.
um,
And yes, and that would have been, if I think it's hard, right? I think there's a lot of pressure, particularly when we are like really strong and like really good educators. We're educators
yeah,
of color, and that
yeah,
like like we're gonna go in, and so we're asked pretty young ages, so like, hey, go and be a leader of color, and like here's all the
yeah.
impact, and like that's hard, like that's hard to say no to, and in thinking about it, if I would have stayed, like 10, 15, 20 years even, I would be going into leadership that much better. Like, imagine if I was like pretty good when I did it, like when I started. I mean, imagine I would have been like even better, like when I if I would have just hold out a little bit longer,
Yeah.
and I might have gone in with like 75% greatness for
Hmm.
kids then, and the school then, and like if I would have waited, I could have been like 95% greatness. So I just think about that. I don't like regret.
Hmm.
I just am like, oh, that was like a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
um and so if I could like say to anybody, like, just give it a couple more years,
Yeah.
like just give it a couple more years.
Because you're right. Like those leadership roles are going to be there. Like now
They're
that
also
I
always there.
yeah, they really are always there, and it always flabbergasted me to hear like these second or third year teachers going, and not to knock anyone, and so I hope anyone who's listening doesn't feel like this is shade being thrown to you, but it was something that when I was younger and like, man, I wish you had a couple more years underneath your belt, so that when you go and say, hey, have you tried this, have you tried this, to know like as the words are leaving your mouth, as a veteran teacher, you know that I would have done those moves already. Like if I'm coming to you and asking you like, hey, can you help me out with such and such situation, that you know I've gone A through Y and I'm looking for you to like help me with that mythological Z that I just haven't thought of. That, but as a teacher, that I've done the things. Whereas there are these
Mhm.
admin folks, and I think that's the part that makes a little bit of a disconnect of like, yeah, be in the classroom a bit more to know like there are certain things I'm going to do and not do, um, and to know the kiddos enough to know that yeah, each cohort of kiddos is different. However, there is a similar theme of like kiddos don't do X, don't do Y. And I remember going through Relay and you saying to our cohort of educators like, you got to stay up on what's what. Like, if you're not familiar with Fortnite, get familiar. Like, throw these little references in so that the kiddos know, like, you're not so much of an old fogey that is like, oh, this Mister's never going to understand what I'm. To be able for them to see, to know that you see them and you are aware. So that similarly too, when the kiddos will say something, I'm going home I'm like, all right, let me Google this. What are they talking about? All right, I
I
wasn't
gotta, I
too up
gotta
on
Google,
Chat
what is
GPT,
that
but
name?
yeah, yeah, I'm gonna put myself onto this stuff to know, like, yeah, I can then. I'm not saying I'm going 12 rounds with you, but I'll be with you with a round or two to be like, oh no, I know this anime, I know that anime, I know all of them. Give me some more, and then for them to be like, oh, okay, if Mister's got the elementary stuff, let me bring him to the middle and take him up to the others. So yeah, I know the day is gonna
Mm.
come where we'll go into leadership, but right now I'm thoroughly enjoying being in the classroom, and it's reaffirming to hear that an awesome educator and leader like yourself is like, man, I wish I spent a couple more years there. I know
Yeah, and
you.
I mean, I will say
No,
the
go, my
that
bad.
like going into leadership is that is working with adults and far more complicated than working with children. Far more complicated. Like, far more.
Um,
Um,
are you willing to say more or say less?
I am an adult, so I get to
Yeah.
talk about myself.
Yes.
Um, we like kids are like I said, authentic, and there's like a transparency about them, and they'll just tell you like it is. There's like very little
Yeah.
filter for kids, and especially teenagers.
Oh yeah.
But adults are like far more sensitive, can get far more defensive, can be like they don't kind of give you, you gotta like kind of work to understand like what's gonna fit for you and how's this gonna work. And they're not want adults, we don't want to fail as much. Like as a kid, we're
Mm,
like, I messed up, let's try it again. Like
yep.
we're okay with like falling off the bike and getting back on, but grown-ups aren't as easily to jump back up and get back on that bike when we fall, and you fall a lot as teachers. And so when you manage adults, helping them get back on the bike is, you got to use it's a little harder sometimes than just
Mm,
telling like a kid like stand up, push yourself
you
up,
got
get on
this.
the
Yeah.
bike. You can't talk to an adult like that.
Part of me in the relationships that I am forming and new teachers who, like, when I would go visit their classrooms, like, hey, are you open to some suggestions? And like start off with that to create um a space of like, hey, this is coming from a space of love, coming from, I just want to be constructive, not destructive. Are you open? And if the person says no, vaya escondida, I'm gonna go be well and I'll let you continue on your way. But if the person's like, hey, yeah, Mr. Pierre, please help, have you thought about this? Because I noticed this, I noticed that. I know you got a lot of things going on. We can't see everything. This is what I noticed. Give that a try. So, talking to a teacher who's in the second grade, went to visit her class the other day. She's like, I've got this one kiddo. They're going through X, Y, and Z. And for whatever reason, I just can't. Would you mind? And I was like, are you sure you want me to give it to you? Because if you want me to give it to you, I'm going to give it to you. However, if you're not ready to accept it, I don't want to mess you up or your flow or to hurt your feelings like you mentioned. And she's like, no, please give me what you got. And when I hear that, that to me is similar to what you were talking about earlier about a teacher who's humble enough to be like, my feelings may be hurt, but if it's going to help this kiddo, so be it. And so, gonna go shadow her class again next week and give her some feedback. But that
Oh,
feeling of this is a safe space. We're all here for the kids,
right.
and we're willing to like open ourselves up and possibly have our feelings hurt. But if it's gonna help a kiddo, then we're like, all right, I'm down to do it. Is the sign to me of like you have the potential to be an exceptional teacher because, like you mentioned, if you're willing to fail, and keep coming back to for the betterment of the kiddos, then you're not failing. That's a win.
And what I heard in what you just said is like by asking like, are you open to this? Like, are you sure? You're
Yeah,
building trust, right?
yeah,
You're building that safe space. How many teachers go to a child and say, "Are you open to me giving you feedback right now on how you're doing X, Y, and Z?" Like we don't,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
We just go straight at kids.
yeah,
We don't ask them if they're
yeah,
open to it, and yet we give that courtesy to adults, right?
yeah,
And so it's and so because and for adults, like they're wanting to build trust just like kids are wanting to build trust. And how we build trust, with a 5-year-old is different than a 10-year-old, different than a 15-year-old, different from a 25 or 35-year-old. And so just hearing how you've approached this teacher, that this teacher is going to be a better teacher because you as a mentor were able to build a trusting relationship, and they're going to be able to grow from that. And at the end of the day, that growth is going to impact kids in a good way,
yeah,
and that is an exciting thing.
yeah. I, uh, I there were so many years of hearing feedback is a gift, feedback is a gift. Um, but when it was being spoken authentically from individuals who were coming through the classroom more than once and on the regular, then
Hmm.
that trust was formed. Whereas if you come to visit the school and you see XYZ, you see a kiddo with their head down. If there's no context as to what this child is going through, and then you're like, "Hey, Mr. Pugh, you should have corrected this, this, and this," I'm just gonna look at you with a bombastic side eye of like, "You got
Right.
no idea. You've got no idea." Like, and for you not to even like, "Hey, did you catch this?" or like try to gain
Right.
context. I'm just gonna look at you like, "My guy, no, 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 no." Like it's going,
Right.
yeah, yeah. So that trust is super super important. So for teachers who are listening, yeah, your kiddos are human beings. Are you in a space to get feedback right now? Are you feeling a lot of feelings? All right, I'm gonna back off. It's not about me right now. I'll come back to you later.
You wonder why they, might have like went for the chair. Maybe you didn't check in. Like,
Right,
are they ready
right.
to hear what you got to say? Like,
I'm not ready to receive.
not ready to receive.
Yeah, yeah. And if they say that, then respect it. Like, okay, all right. Me trying to force this on you right now is not going to work.
Right. Have some, pull out a different tool in the toolbox because just
Yeah.
like if we as adults, if I'm not ready to hear what you have to tell me, and then you keep trying to talk to me, like, like that ain't
Mm-mm.
gonna go well either. So
No.
like we can have the same empathy because like we, as adults we understand that
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. if I, because
Uh,
we are appreciative of, um, I also want to appreciate your time. If I could ask you, is there anything that you are reading at the moment where you're like, this is such a good book? I highly recommend it. Or if it's something that you've read recently where you're like, I'm going to need to read that again. I just need to let things marinate. What would that be? And it could be more than one. Maybe you've got more than one.
I mean, right now, like my forever first lady, Michelle Obama, the light we carry is
Yeah.
like I mean, then like Netflix dropped like Oprah and Michelle having a conversation. Like it is speaking to the educator in me. It's speaking to the parent in me. It's speaking to the wife in me. It's just like that light that we carry and like what that means for me as a part of a community of people. um oh, that is my book. I've got like the book, I'm listening to it on Audible, I'm watching like the specials. It's feeding a part of my soul right now that is, I'm loving it. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. And then we are both lovers of music. If you were to create a playlist,
Oh,
either I've had to expand this the more and more um, guests come onto the podcast. I used to just like, oh, can you give me 5 songs? Now it's like 5 artists. It could be 5 records. It could be 5 genres, just so that we can make a playlist that's giving you life at the moment.
oh my goodness. I was like, well, what if I did 5 covers? I mean, you've got me here because
Yeah.
well, I mean, you could take like Bobby Womack. He does a
Okay.
cover of Fly Me to the Moon that is just, whew, gets you
Okay.
right here, right?
That's one.
Um, Also, Kat Burns, she has this song called Free. Has some explicit lyrics, but it just, when I like want to pump myself up and like really like feel like, yes, I listen to Free by Kat Burns. Um, I took my daughter to her for her 14th birthday to her first ever concert at the House of Blues to see Dominic Fike. This kid is no joke. Like this young artist, Dominic Fike, he has this song with Elton John, Kiss of Venus. I think that might be a cover too. I would listen to anything right now by him. He is, I was a fan. Took her to her first concert, walked out a fan. I also Teddy Swims. Teddy Swims, I don't even know what genre to put him in. I don't know if he's like R&B or country or pop. I got to see him at Toad's Place here in New Haven, and he is like, he says, when people ask me what type of music I sing love music.
Hmm.
He is so fascinating. My favorite song right now that I listen to all the time is called Dose.
Dose.
And
Okay.
then Dose. Yep, Dose. And then my favorite album of all time, I can't pick one song because it's like this, I just can't. Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Just
All right.
Miseducation of Lauryn.
All right.
That's it. Well, there,
Okay.
I gave you a couple covers, maybe some names you haven't heard, and then a classic.
Yeah.
A
I'm definitely
classic.
gonna look up Dominic Fike. So, how did Layla feel about
Willie, you
the
know
concert?
Dominic Fike, how he swims? I'm telling you, like, you got to.
Okay.
You're gonna love him.
How did she feel about the first concert?
She was beside herself. It was everything. There was like almost fainting. There was
Oh,
sweat. I mean,
excellent.
it was everything.
Awesome.
And she has a signed hoodie from Dominic Fike. Dominic Fike, if you're ever listening to this podcast, you made my
Oh,
kids' dreams.
excellent. Excellent. And my dream has been fulfilled as well in having this conversation with you. So, folks, um, I really, really, really appreciate you, Dr. Good. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for coming through. This was so enjoyable. Um, and to, as you mentioned, to be seen, to see others, and to also be able to sort of look into the future as to know, like, hey, this is the potential that this person possesses, is a wonderful, wonderful feeling to have about someone else, and then also for it to be reciprocated is pretty dope too. So thank you very much for that. This has been a very appreciative podcast by an individual who has known you for many, many moons and is so very, very thankful and grateful for knowing you.
I am so, so proud of you, Wooly. And if you ever need anything, like, I am like one of your biggest, biggest cheerleaders, and you
I
never
do.
hesitate to reach out.
I do. And
Okay.
right back at you. I appreciate you. Appreciate you. So, folks, if you are listening to this podcast, thank you very much. I am Mr. Pierre. She is Dr. Good. And this has been another episode of the Chronicles of Mr. We're out.
Bye.